Most car crashes end in seconds, but some leave behind scenes so disturbing they haunt people for years. In this video, we'll go through 5 real cases where a simple drive turned into something far worse. These aren't just tragic, they're confusing, violent, and in some cases, downright mysterious. Each one is a chilling reminder of how fast life can change, and how not every crash comes with a clear explanation.
Nikki Katsurus was killed in a horrific accident after speeding in her father's Porsche. Extremely disturbing photographs of her mutilated body quickly leaked and spread on many websites where she was dubbed Porsche Girl.
It was Halloween, October 31st, 2006, in Lake Forest, California. A 18-year-old Nikki Katsurus had just finished lunch with her family. She was a quiet, artistic college freshman who loved photography. But that afternoon, something changed. Without warning, Nikki took the keys to her father's Porsche 911 Carrera. She had never driven it before. Her mother, Leslie, saw her pulling out of the driveway, just 10 minutes after her father, Christos, had left for work. Panic set in immediately. This wasn't like Nikki. Leslie picked up the phone and called Christos, her voice tight with fear. He turned around right away, called emergency services and began searching for their daughter. But nothing could have prepared them for what came next. Around 1:38 p.m., Nikki was speeding down the 241 toll road, over 100 miles per hour. Witnesses said she was changing lanes when she clipped a Honda Civic. In a split second, everything unraveled. The Porsche spun across the median into oncoming traffic and slammed violently into a concrete toll booth. The impact was catastrophic. Nikki died on the spot. First responders were stunned by what they saw. The car was mangled beyond recognition. The scene was so gruesome, the coroner didn't allow her parents to view the body. They had to identify their daughter in other ways. But as horrific as that moment was, what followed would break the family in ways no one could imagine. Just days after the crash, Nikki's family was blindsided by a second tragedy. Graphic photos from the crash, taken by the California Highway Patrol as part of their investigation, somehow made their way online. These weren't leaked accidentally. 2 CHP employees, Aaron Reich and Thomas O'Donnell, admitted to sharing the images. Reich forwarded them to friends. O'Donnell claimed he only emailed them to himself. Either way, the damage was done. The internet did the rest. The images spread like wildfire. They were posted on message boards, social media, and shared through email chains. People gave her a cruel nickname, Porsche Girl. Strangers mocked the way she died. Some created fake memorial pages laced with insults. Others used the photos for shock content. And then, it got personal. Nikki's family started receiving the images directly, once in an email with the subject line, "Woohoo, Daddy, hey Daddy, I'm still alive." It was torture. Leslie stopped checking her email. They pulled Nikki's younger sister Danielle out of school after someone threatened to put the crash photos in her locker. What started as grief turned into an ongoing nightmare, one they couldn't escape. They tried everything. Legal notices, takedown requests, calls to webmasters. But every time they removed one image, another would pop up somewhere else, and the world wasn't kind. Online comments poured in. Cold, judgmental, cruel. People called Nikki spoiled, reckless. They said she got what she deserved. It was as if the internet had forgotten she was a real person. As if her family's pain didn't matter. Eventually, the Katsurus family took legal action. They sued the California Highway Patrol for negligence and emotional distress. At first, the case was dismissed. There were no laws to protect families from this kind of violation, but they refused to give up. In 2010, the California Court of Appeal ruled in their favor. The court said the family had every right to sue. What those CHP officers did wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal. In 2012, they reached a settlement, $2.37 million. It couldn't bring Nikki back, it couldn't erase what had been done, but it was something. A message that this kind of cruelty wouldn't go unchallenged. They hoped their fight would help others, that no other family would be put through what they endured.
I'll never forget the accident scene itself.
A mother and 4 young children killed in a head-on collision up in Westchester.
It was a Sunday morning, July 26, 2009, in Westchester County, New York. Diane Scheler, a 36-year-old mother of 2, was behind the wheel of her brother's minivan, heading home from a family camping trip. Her 5-year-old son, Brian, sat in the back seat, along with her 3 young nieces. It was supposed to be a peaceful drive back to West Babylon. Her husband, Daniel, followed close behind in his truck, the family dog by his side. They left the Hunter Lake campground around 9:30 a.m. After a quick stop at McDonald's for breakfast, Diane seemed completely fine, smiling, composed, in control. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary. They made one more stop at a gas station where she asked for pain medication, but the store didn't have any. Still, there was nothing that suggested anything was wrong. Not yet. At 11 a.m., she called her brother Warren to say they were running a bit late because of traffic. Again, she sounded normal. Just another mom making her way home with a car full of kids. But by noon, something changed. Drivers on the highway began calling in reports. A red minivan was driving aggressively. One driver even claimed to have seen a woman vomiting on the side of the road. The reports kept coming, but no one knew what was really happening inside that van. At 12:58 p.m., the first real alarm came from inside the vehicle. Diane's 8-year-old niece Emma called her father in a panic. She said something was wrong. Her aunt couldn't see properly. She wasn't acting right. Warren immediately called Diane. She picked up, but her voice was slurred, disoriented. She called him by the wrong name. When he urged her to pull over and wait, she insisted everything was fine, blaming the kids for distracting her. But it was clear something was very, very wrong. By the time Warren reached where she was supposed to be, the van was gone. Then, at 1:30 p.m., Diane made a turn that sealed their fate. She entered the Taconic State Parkway, going the wrong way, southbound, in the northbound lane. Witnesses were horrified. The minivan was speeding at over 80 miles per hour, barreling straight toward oncoming traffic. Some drivers swerved, others didn't have a chance. At 1:35 p.m., everything came to a violent, devastating end. The minivan slammed head-on into a Chevrolet Trailblazer. The force of the impact caused another vehicle, a Chevrolet Tracker, to crash as well. It all happened in just 3 minutes. 7 people died instantly. Diane, her 2-year-old daughter Erin, her nieces, 5-year-old Kate, 7-year-old Allison, and 8-year-old Emma, all gone. In the Trailblazer, 81-year-old Michael Bastardi, his 49-year-old son Guy, and their 74-year-old friend Dan Longo didn't make it either. Somehow, Brian, Diane's 5-year-old son, survived, though he was badly injured. One of his cousins was pulled from the wreckage alive but passed away later in the hospital. In the end, Brian was the only one left. His life forever changed. As the wreckage cooled and investigators examined the scene, they made a chilling discovery: a broken bottle of vodka inside the van. Toxicology reports came next, and they told a story few were ready to hear. Diane's blood alcohol level was 0.19%, more than twice the legal limit. She also had high levels of THC in her system, pointing to recent marijuana use. The findings stunned everyone who knew her. Diane had always been seen as responsible, caring, a mother who wouldn't dream of endangering her kids. Her husband, Daniel, refused to believe it. He insisted something else had to be at play. He pushed for answers. He had her samples retested. He searched for any explanation that could make sense of what happened. But the results didn't change. Diane had been drunk and high behind the wheel with 5 children in the car. Officials ruled the crash as negligence, avoidable, tragic, and devastating. Public outrage followed. The story spread like wildfire. People wanted to understand. How could this happen? The crash led to legislative change. Then, Governor David Paterson signed the Child Passenger Protection Act, making it a felony in New York to drive under the influence with a child in the vehicle. But for the families who lost everything, no law could fix what was already broken.
Story and video that made national news. No doubt you saw it. A man involved in a crash in Glendale Friday was ejected from his car onto a freeway sign. Tonight, the victim's cousin is speaking out.
It was the morning of October 30th, 2015 in Los Angeles. There was 20-year-old Richard Panan from Burbank behind the wheel of his 2004 Ford Fiesta. He was dressed and ready for his first day on the job at the Glendale Collision Center. Richard loved cars, fixing them, driving them. By 7 a.m., the young man would be gone, and the way it happened stunned the city, shocked the nation. Just 5 days earlier, Richard's family had gathered in a sacred moment. They had performed a matah, a traditional Armenian Christian ritual. Richard had been through serious health struggles before. His cousin, Armen Kardashian, said his life had once been spared, and their faith was unshaken. This ritual, they believed, would shield him from harm. They felt peace afterward, hope. But that sense of protection would unravel in the most surreal and horrifying way imaginable. Around 7 a.m., Richard's Ford Fiesta was weaving through traffic near the Griffith Park stretch of the freeway. Witnesses watched in disbelief as the small car sped between lanes, passed on the right shoulder, darted past slower drivers. He was moving too fast, too recklessly. There was no room for error. Then it happened. His car clipped the rear end of a Ford F-150, moving at about 50 miles per hour. What followed was chaos. Richard's car flipped. The vehicle shot up an embankment like a launched rocket. And then came the moment that made the world stop. Richard was ejected with such force, he was launched more than 20 feet into the air. He didn't land on the pavement. He didn't land in a ditch. He landed on top of a massive freeway sign, high above the road, on the Colorado Street exit. For a moment, drivers thought it was a Halloween stunt, a fake body on a freeway sign. It couldn't be real, but it was. Richard's lifeless body lay sprawled across the metal structure, visible to hundreds of stunned commuters trapped in the traffic jam below. Emergency calls came flooding in. LA Fire rushed to the scene. By the time they arrived, it was too late. The California Highway Patrol launched an immediate investigation. Officer Edgar Figueroa confirmed that Richard had been driving recklessly. Los Angeles Fire Department spokesman Brian Humphrey confirmed that Richard was already gone when help arrived. He never stood a chance. The crash happened just outside Griffith Park, near Atwater Village. For hours, the freeway was shut down. Later, Richard's cousin Armen spoke out. He insisted Richard always wore a seatbelt. He had even installed a 5-point harness system in his car. He was safety-minded, not reckless, but CHP officers were certain there was no restraint used that morning. And then came the question no one could answer. Why? The timing only made it harder to accept. Just 5 days before his family had performed the matah. On their GoFundMe page, Armen wrote, "In the Armenian culture, sacrifices are done when someone escapes death, as Richard's life was once spared. But now, Richard is gone." He called it ironic, bitterly so. Not only did God choose to take this young man's life, Armen wrote, but decided to make such a spectacle out of it. Back home, the Pananian family was left broken, confused, searching for meaning in a tragedy that offered none. That freeway sign became more than a marker. It was a scar burned into the memory of a city, a symbol of a life that ended in the most brutal, public, and unexplainable way. The coroner, Lieutenant David Smith, later reported that Richard had suffered multiple fractures. The exact cause of death was unclear. Toxicology results would take months. The driver of the pickup and 2 passengers walked away unharmed, but no one who saw that scene would ever forget it.
Taylor Pollock from the First Alert Desk, and I've just confirmed that a woman has died after crashing a car in the same location her boyfriend crashed and died in just days earlier.
It was the kind of town where nothing ever really happened. Riverside, Alabama, population just over 2,000, sat quietly about 40 minutes outside Birmingham. but that peace shattered in the early hours of June 20th, 2024. Around 1:30 a.m., a call came in. A car had slammed into Riverside Baptist Church, the oldest building in town. Flames engulfed it fast. Fire crews rushed in from Riverside and nearby Pell City, but the fire was already out of control. Inside the wrecked vehicle was 19-year-old Anthony Banks, Jr. He had just turned 1917 days earlier. Police said he'd lost control on a sharp curve near the church. His car left the road, hit the building, and sparked the fire that destroyed both the church and him. By morning, all that remained was scorched brick and ash, a symbol of faith gone, and a young man remembered by friends as joyful, gone too soon. His mother posted online, searching for help with funeral costs. His life hadn't even started before he was tragically taken, she wrote. But the heartbreak wasn't over. 3 days later, almost the same time of night, it happened again. At 12:53 a.m. on Sunday, June 23rd, Riverside police were in pursuit of a 2019 BMW X5 taken without permission. It tore through town, straight toward the spot where Anthony had crashed. The car lost control, slammed into a brick wall near the ruins of the church, and burst into flames. Inside was 19-year-old Jennifer Hell Arellano Maldonado, Anthony's girlfriend. She wasn't wearing a seatbelt. She didn't make it out. The crash intensified the destruction at the church site. Firefighters battled flames for the second time in days. 2 teens in love, both gone, 3 days apart, at the same place, nearly the same time. State Trooper Brandon Bailey confirmed Jennifer had been fleeing police. The car was reported missing by a family member. She was alone. No one knows what was going through her mind. Investigators haven't ruled anything out. The curve where both crashes happened is now etched with tragedy. Riverside Baptist Church became the backdrop for 2 devastating endings. Mayor Rusty Jessup said the church would be rebuilt. A local man said, "I hope they make it as nice as it was. But no matter how beautiful it becomes, the town will never forget." Anthony's mother continues posting tributes. Her GoFundMe had raised a few $100s by midweek. As I write this, tears flow uncontrollably, praying for this all to be some nightmare we will all wake from soon. 2 teenagers, in love, gone, one after the other, as if pulled by something unseen, toward the same place, the same fate, and now there's a curve in Riverside no one will ever look at the same way again. September 3rd, 1999, Ontario's Highway 401, North America's busiest roadway, hummed with routine. Cars headed to work, trucks moved goods, the skies above Windsor were calm. Nothing unusual, nothing alarming, until everything changed. Just after 8 a.m., near the Manning Road overpass, something rolled in like a silent threat. Fog. Not a gentle mist or morning haze. This was a wall of white, so thick drivers could barely see a meter in front of them. There had been no warnings, no alerts, just the sudden loss of sight, and then the sound. Metal on metal. A tractor trailer, barely visible, began to slow. The truck behind it was following too close. It never had a chance to stop. It jackknifed across the highway. In the fog, no one saw it coming. One crash triggered another, then another. Within minutes, 5 separate pileups erupted in both directions. 87 vehicles. Fires broke out. Explosions ripped through the fog. One officer later described it as a massive fireball. It wasn't a highway anymore, it was a battlefield. 7 people died instantly. 1 more passed away later in the hospital. 45 others were injured, some severely. The fire was so intense that cars fused together. Victims were trapped inside, unable to escape the heat. A few made desperate attempts to flee on foot, only to vanish into the fog. Others screamed for help, their voices barely audible over the chaos. Constable Lee Bate of the Ontario Provincial Police was supposed to leave early that day for a softball tournament. But when the call came in, she raced toward the fog, unaware of what waited inside. She noticed a strange mist rising from the fields, something that didn't feel right. Without hesitation, she drove in reverse up a westbound ramp. dispatchers confused, but it was the fastest way in. What she found defied belief. Vehicles stacked on top of each other, flames reaching skyward, people crying out, some in shock, others injured and dazed. Then, an explosion. Just 25 meters away, a firefighter threw her to the ground, shielding her from the blast. She never learned his name. She never forgot his face. She made it to her ball game that weekend. But every September 3rd, she remembers what she saw, what she heard, what she'll never forget. Just a kilometer away, Kirk Wallstead was feeding his peacocks when the sound of crashing metal shattered the quiet. He was a lawyer then, now the deputy mayor of Lakeshore. He ran toward the highway. His father and brother had already gotten there. They pulled injured passengers from cars and carried them across fields. On his father's property, under the shade of a tree, they set up a makeshift triage. Some lay bleeding. Some waited, silently, for word on loved ones who would never come. And still, more cars kept crashing. No one knew how big the disaster really was. The fog swallowed everything. What made it worse, what made it unforgivable, was that the weather system at Windsor Airport failed that morning. It didn't register the fog. No alert was issued. No one was warned. That failure may have cost lives. Highway 401, even before that day, had a reputation. Built in the 1950s and 60s, it was long, flat, and straight, perfect for highway hypnosis. 2 narrow lanes in each direction, gravel shoulders, a skinny median. Locals didn't call it Highway 401, they called it Carnage Alley. By the time the fog rolled in that Friday, 22 people had already died on that stretch in 1999 alone. Just days earlier, Ontario's transportation minister had described the highway as pleasant to drive. Gary McNamara, then deputy mayor of Tecumseh, got the call during his commute. He rushed to the scene and stood frozen, watching flames rise from twisted steel. Some people couldn't be rescued. One young woman was trapped inside her car. Telling her family she hadn't made it was one of the hardest things he'd ever done. The cleanup took days. The entire stretch had to be repaved. The government made changes, but to many, it felt like too little, too late. A coroner's inquest recommended 25 safety measures. Lawsuits followed. In 2004, Ontario launched a $322 million upgrade to the corridor. It wasn't completed until 2010. But even then, not all of the highway had changed. By 2016, vast sections remained just as dangerous. And in 2017, another crash. 2 more lives lost. That tragedy reignited public fury. High-tension cable barriers were added. Eventually, residents pushed hard enough that full concrete barriers were installed in certain areas. By 2023, some of those sections were finally finished. But the work, slow, costly, incomplete, still wasn't done. As of 2024, crews are still trying to make that stretch of highway safer.